This is your 2 News Oklahoma Fantasy Football Forecast.
So Yahoo used to have actually a fantasy football forecast. They changed. We made them change, Ryan.
I know. We pressured them. We pressured them out of it.
We did.
That was always when we started, that was always the talk. It was like, well, we got to throw the 2 News Oklahoma in front of it just so it's like perfectly ours, you know?
I think they heard there's a podcast out there with an actual meteorologist that does football forecast.
We better watch ourselves. I do a Friday Night Live podcast now as well. We do not have a fancy song and big voice guy intro.
Okay.
So
Okay, I could do that for you.
But I saw it. You guys are like in the studio. You're doing the whole...
we did the first one in studio,
Yeah.
then we did this one.
Okay.
And we couldn't get the video to work. So then we
Okay.
just covered it with, like the graphics.
Sure.
Unless we had video. But yes, we're in that world. We're all living in that world now, boys. Everybody got a podcast.
Can you believe we're already here, week 1?
football. Oh,
Yes.
I can feel
yes,
it.
I can. I
Yes.
feel like I've been waiting for this for a very, very long time.
Had a wild weekend of college football just to round it out with this upcoming, slate of games. The big game coming up on Thursday on NBC.
That's right.
Wait, other people are playing football this weekend?
Some of the guys who get paid the bigger bucks.
That's true. That's true.
So wanted to just revisit our draft real quick.
Okay.
In our league. We were originally going to do the keeper league, right? And then we couldn't get the same number of people coming back.
Yeah.
So we got rid of that plan, still did the auction format. That particular Monday, the weather was really nice. Comparatively, because it's been hot, and it was hot when I was out there, but it was like, okay, I'm going to mow the lawn tonight.
You're not going to die hot.
Good choice.
And, I get out there at like 6 or so, and I'm mowing, and then I get done, and as soon as I'm done, it said, your draft has begun like 15 minutes ago. And I'm like, oh no. And so I'm scrambling to get out. And so it makes my first 3 picks for me, which, they're good players. I got Justin Jefferson,
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, and Nick Chubb right off the jump.
And
but then I'm
for a grand total of?
Oh, it was like, I think my max
You had
bid,
about $12.
my max bid I could make at that point was like $6.
Yeah.
Dang.
So I'm needless to say, I wasn't drafting again for another like 30 minutes.
And you ended up getting some decent players to round out the roster at the bottom, but yes.
Yeah.
That's a mistake.
I'm really holding out hope for Kenneth S. Pickett.
Yeah.
This
That's
season.
right. So any draft plan you had sort of went out the window. Mike, did you follow sort of a plan?
My plan was to not bid high in the beginning, to kind of go conservative. And it worked out in some cases, but then you realize when you start bidding against someone that competitive,
I know it.
You're like, I'm not letting you beat me.
And I feel
on
like
that.
you've got more of a problem that way than others.
Yes.
You can drive up the price on Mike potentially if you know which players to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that happened. But I'm okay with the team. I think it's projected third. So hey. I'll
And your
take
top
third.
3 or 4 players are?
You gotta put me on the spot.
I do have
down-
to put you on the spot. We're
I had
doing a podcast.
Yeah, I put a
about
couple notes here. Like I know Barkley was your big spender.
Barkley.
You spent $57 on Barkley.
it. Yeah,
Right.
you got competitive there. I
But
think.
Joe Burrow only went $20 range, and I'm like, what? What's going on? See, that confused me. I was really off on that. Garrett Wilson, who I'm all in on this season, and Devontae Smith. I'm an Eagles fan, so I have him. And I'm big on Ridley. I think he'll be good for old Joey Sunshine. So
yeah.
we'll see.
And then
go
Cayden,
ahead.
you're projected 5th.
Yes.
After our draft.
That's right.
Your biggest spends $59 on Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And then $55 on Derrick Henry.
I went in, a couple weeks ago, I gave it a little bit of thought. All right, what is my draft plan? You may remember famously last year, I came out of the box. Came out hot.
Came out hot.
Spent $75 on Jonathan Taylor. Ended up having a really good year because I spent that $75, got scared, freaked out, sat it out for quite a while, and then it ended up getting quite a few bargains at the end of the draft. But I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to spend on a running back, and I'm not going to spend on a quarterback this year. And what did I do when the picks started flying and Mike and I were eating together at Charleston's? I went nuts and spent a whole bunch of money on Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. I got the best team in this league for the upcoming 2019 NFL season. It's crazy how there should be some sort of sociological experiment with regard to these bid leagues. how, like you mentioned, Mike, getting competitive becomes a thing, and then just a little bit of panic when you see the biggest names available going off the board, and you think, I've got to have one or two of those guys, and you start getting in on things. And if I had waited, there were so many incredible bargains once everybody had spent
every year
50 plus on one guy on their roster. That still leaves a whole lot. And if you have the entire $186 is what we had to spend in your league, I think you can clean up. I don't know. I thought that lesson had gotten through this thick skull last year, and for whatever reason, the full 365 days gave me a chance to forget it. And I got competitive and went after guys that both of those guys, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, they could have great years.
Sure.
Right? I mean, no question. That's possible. I do like Todd Monken, and I like the ability to keep Lamar healthy for a full season in a way that, it didn't happen last year. That said, I bet they run him less, just knowing Monken and how much he likes to throw the ball. And that really does, while I think it's probably good for the Ravens as a team, it's not good for my fantasy team, probably.
Yes.
And the same with Henry. I mean, that's just a position where they get banged up too much, and at his age, for me to go spending big money. So, and then, to be honest, the worst money spent by me was, I think, the first guy I got, Deebo Samuel. And there's just look, since McCaffrey came on board, he's not the number one option for the 49ers anymore. And while he can do it in multiple ways and can be a nice player for you, I spent way too much money on him. So yes, I have a lot of regret. I do not expect to win the league this year. After last year's draft, I thought, hey, maybe I will, and I think I did end up getting close, but do not expect that to be the case this year. Just hoping that everybody else has key players get hurt at this point. That's what I'm going for. I might invest in like some voodoo dolls or something.
And then our other big note I wanted to make on our draft, just like something that I didn't think of as like a draft strategy, was our very own Michael Sager ended up with both Mahomes and Jalen Hurts.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy.
That is absurd money. He's projected first in the league.
Yeah.
Obviously those point projections are going to be huge all season.
I like the thinking there in a 2-quarterback league. Let's just own that position. So there are 3 guys clearly above the rest, right? Is what most people think, and I kind of think really it's just the 2 he got. Like Josh Allen for me, maybe, I'm not so sure. That is potentially an incredible advantage for Michael Sager. Hats off.
So our modeling, our scoring model is actually I replicated off my home league. And in my home league, someone does have Mahomes and Hurts, and they've not made the playoffs the past couple of years. So,
interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, they've never made the playoffs, but
interesting.
Yeah, so I love that idea, but you've got to have some other studs on there,
sure.
And
or you've got to really, really find value with the way you spend your money the rest of the draft.
Yeah, and so for Sager, who he's a competitor now, not just the colleague, but a competitor. He's got Travis Etienne, which is obviously good. Miles Sanders, there's 2 good. He's got Christian Watson as receiver, but then after that, it's Michael Thomas. It's just like
I hope he listens to this podcast to hear you ripping on his team.
Michael, you suck.
I really hope.
I love you, Michael.
All right. So speaking of, you mentioned Etienne, and we were talking about we mentioned Ridley earlier. Some of the things that I was just thinking coming into this season, that I wanted to get you guys' take on. What are we thinking about those Jags skills players? And now that team is more talented and kind of on the rise, is there a concern of these guys are all going to perform well enough to kind of overshadow each other fantasy-wise, where there's going to be not as many points to go to just ETN or just to Ridley because that offense is really beefing up?
Sure. Well, I think what we've done with the Jaguars is we continue to propel T-Law into Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes status. We saw in the beginning of the season it was still rough, and then in the second half he just took off. And so we're still projecting that into this year, saying, oh, well, if he continues that way, which we all, have rosy eyes this time of year, then we're going to see Calvin Ridley, exceed 1,000 yards receiving easily. And then, ETN is going to be always at the goal line. These things rarely ever come to prediction, So maybe we're just too bullish. Maybe Etienne hit a stretch of easier defenses that allowed him to take off a little bit, Lawrence, I should say. And so maybe he'll struggle again this year. Right. And then everything else kind of goes down. Sure. And then you got Tank Bigsby standing in the background wanting to steal those goal line touches from Etienne. So the Jaguars are intriguing to me.
Yeah, they're mouths to feed. It depends on the price you paid, I suppose, for any of those guys. Ridley is the one that I'm just fascinated to see what the fit is like. But generally speaking, I like coaches and quarterbacks that produce yards and points.
Yeah.
And Peterson and Lawrence will do that. And so, are you going to get somebody who maybe has to fight for some touches on that squad? Maybe, probably. There will be weeks, I think, where there's a bit of a dip. But generally speaking, I expect the Jags to move the ball and score points. And that's better than having a bunch of, having probably, let's say traditionally, because I think maybe it could be different this year. But the name that springs to mind is like the Bears' number one receiver. Yeah, he might be number one. He might be targeted a lot. But what does that really do for you? I mean, I like the idea that you can probably count on quite a few guys in Jacksonville to put up pretty good numbers.
And I'd say that I have the same sort of feeling towards this new look Jets team where they have obviously bringing Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall's back, Garrett Wilson's next year, and then they have both they brought in Dalvin Cook, they got Allen Lazard, like all these different new weapons that, again, is there going to be enough to go around even with a quarterback as prolific as Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, and a quick thought, I'd let Mike speak to this too. I just have no idea. With Jacksonville, I feel like I have some idea of where the ball's going to go. With the Jets, I really have no idea. Like, Breece Hall coming off the injury, is he really, at the end of the year, are we going to look back and say he was the best fantasy player at that position for the Jets? Or does Dalvin Cook have a little more in the tank than maybe I think? So I don't know what it's going to be running back wise. I think Garrett Wilson, who's on your team, right?
Yeah.
I think he's going to put up big numbers, but behind him there are intriguing options. But I'm not sure how it's going to shake out. The Jets are a little bit of a mystery to me. I'm intrigued. I wish I had a couple of those guys in some of my leagues, but I don't know how it shakes out exactly.
I think it's Garrett Wilson's team, and that's it. I really do. I think with Aaron Rodgers kind of showing him off in the preseason, Aaron only wants what Aaron wants, and him throwing that touchdown pass to G. Will, I think, said everything. I trust you. This is how it's going to go this season. And Breece Hall coming back from injury, it's going to take some time. Dalvin Cook, he's a little older now. A shared backfield like that, it just never equals great success fantasy-wise. So they're kind of, hurting each other. I think this is G. Will's team.
Defensive coach, already a good defense, a team that won with defense, at least, until they stopped winning at the end of last year. And Rodgers, his age, like this, to me, very, very different from the team we just talked about in Jacksonville, where that's ascending offensively. Look, Rodgers is only going to be about winning, I would think. It's not necessarily numbers. His talent will allow them to move the ball and score, but I don't know how much they really even need to score. It doesn't feel like a huge fantasy winning team, as interesting as they'll be in as much as they might win.
Because we've seen that with Green Bay. He hasn't had any major superstars since Devontae Adams left. But also the offensive line is a big issue for the Jets. And I was watching Hard Knocks the other night, and the coaches realized that. So if they don't get that together, then it might be a long year in Gotham City.
Yeah, and it's one of the, like you mentioned, it being Garrett Wilson's team. It feels very much like that Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams dynamic, where that's going to be his guy, nonstop, no matter where he's at on the field. That's going to be his guy, and that worked for them fantasy wise. But I don't know how that back and forth will go. Because
Randall Cobb and Adam Lazard, who else? We'll see. Corey Davis just retired. I mean, those are all no-namers. I mean, I can't even tell you who the other receivers are on that team, other than Garrett Wilson. So,
and I mean that might as well be it. Yeah. Some other little transaction stuff that went around the league. Before I even get to that, the news today that Travis Kelce hyperextends his knee.
Yeah, that's not good.
In one of my leagues, one of the many people who spent that first round pick on Travis Kelce. I think I was picking fifth, and I was like, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm going to get him. And somebody I was talking to this morning said, "Oh, I had my fantasy draft this weekend. I took Kelsey, and I couldn't believe he dropped to 8 or something." You know, I was like, "Yeah, it's really good." And then sure enough, a couple hours later, hyperextends.
Yeah, you're stealing content I have for later with something we have coming up regarding the games that are on NBC this week. But yes and amen to everything you just said. There's, at some point, these guys that are fantasy bell cows, the best of the best, begin to dip. And I do wonder if this is the year for Kelsey.
Kelsey made it 10 seasons without missing a game to injury. Hasn't missed a game to injury since his rookie year. I think he played one game and got hurt.
Yeah, he's due.
That feels.
Yeah.
That feels
also
due.
used a first round pick on him in the league.
Yeah, that's how it ends up going. So he's got what is it? Is it Gray? What's it? Noah Gray?
Eric Gray? Or am I
his backup?
Yeah.
I think it's Noah Gray, who gets work throughout most of the season, but in general, I mean, obviously you're not getting Noah Gray.
Let's just give those touches to Justin Ross. Let's just let him just throw jump balls to Justin Ross, huh?
And so, that opens the door for like a Kadarius Toney and, some of those receivers who are relatively new because they just cycle receivers.
That's right.
Which, I mean, Sky Moore.
MVS is there.
Yeah, MVS and Sky Moore are both returning, whether or not you trust them enough to to actually play them. I think
somebody's going to be catching the ball from Mahomes. Yeah.
Although in the preseason, all I kept seeing, they just kept throwing it to Rashee Rice. I'm saying his name right?
Yeah, I think so.
Rashee Rice, which I found interesting. But, in preseason, you want to pick the players you really want to get working and trying to get acclimated. To me, that signaled we need to get him going. We're going to need him. So let's just they were just
they threw it to Ross a lot too. Okay. And I don't know if he's in the mix for that or not. The Chiefs are a mystery to me with regard to that. I do, but I'm with you. I think Rice, depending upon where you got him in your league,
I don't even have
pop.
him. Yeah,
it could pop.
And so we'll keep on this. I know we're a little crunched for time. We start a little bit later. So we'll jump straight to this Detroit-Kansas City game coming up Thursday night.
Bum, 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 bum. Oh, I know it's NBC. It's on us. So,
Yep. Yeah, okay. Carrie Underwood, the whole deal. Yep. So Mahomes v. Goff, obviously two entirely different tiers of quarterback.
Yes, a little bit.
Mahomes obviously going to be oftentimes the number one quarterback taken in most drafts. Jared Goff, somewhere toward the bottom, but still a very serviceable quarterback when it comes to fantasy. I think he's projected, 15.7 points. If it turns into a shootout like everybody seems to believe it will, then he'd obviously be scoring a lot more than that. With that Detroit backfield, it's sort of similar to the Kansas City backfield. You really don't know who's going to get as far as the lion's share of the touches.
Sure.
Because Pacheco, obviously the starter for Kansas City. The Lions, I'm pretty sure, I think Montgomery's the starter right now, but it's this whole thing with Gibbs and him going back and forth. So there's uncertainty there. I don't know. Do you guys, out of those,
the Lions are fakes, and they're going to be called out on national television this Thursday night. It's about dang time. I'm tired of this fakeness. This sun god. He's a slot receiver.
Fade them all.
Reality settles in Thursday night when the Mahomes come in and wipe that.
So even without Chris Jones, you think that Chiefs defense is going to tune them up? The Lions are
Kansas
just
City,
stepping up in class.
Super Bowl defending champions. Look, my Eagles couldn't beat them. You think the Lions are going to come in?
Fade the whole Lions squad.
Fade them.
Mike says. Okay, what say you, Ryan?
From
Detroit?
I don't blame you.
Yeah. A lot of history says that.
Yes.
That might be wise.
Yes. So that's the thing too. It's one of the I wrote something up separately that a couple weeks ago a week ago for just looking back at some different Lions teams, Lions eras, and a lot of them have been you're coming off this high from the last season, and everybody's like, oh, playoffs. This one, there's a lot of NFC title, Super Bowl,
right,
yeah. And it's just one of those things. It feels like it's the letdown, but obviously with this game, I don't know how many Lions fans, realistic Lions fans, are expecting them to win this game. I think the hope is that it's close.
Yeah, it's close. But the Gibbs talk is oh my gosh, we're gonna put him out in so many different positions.
I know.
He's a rookie, and it's his first NFL game. He fumbles the first time, and he's done on the bench.
That's what they were going to do with DeAndre Swift. Right. It's the same deal.
It's all the preseason hype gets me the most, I think. But no, I hate to be so critical of your Lions because, one, I've always liked Amon-Ra. It's just, it's time for the, it's the clock strikes midnight on Thursday.
Yeah. If the question is, who would I fade fantasy-wise in this game? Gibbs comes to mind because I just don't know exactly how much you're going to trust a rookie in game one, and I think the projection's there at, 12 or 13 points?
Yep, 13.9 for Gibbs.
Yeah, he's talented, saw the speed at Alabama, certainly a game breaker, and I bet they do try to get it in his hands. And it's a game where they know they have to score, and so you would think it, but I just don't trust it until I see it, and so I would fade that. And then even before the injury, I had great regret about taking Travis Kelce 5th in the league earlier this week, and it just feels like, you know what? This team is all about repeating, which they haven't done. For this group, it's all about that big game in February.
Yes.
I know that Travis Kelce just week in, week out has given people an advantage at tight end that's just unbelievable. It makes him worth taking many years that high, say 5th overall in your fantasy draft. But my hunch is, even if he were completely healthy right now, he's just coming into this season with a little different mindset from a lot of the other guys that you probably want on your fantasy team who are just a little bit more thirsty. Hungry. Hungry may be the better term. Sometimes I get out of my lane and say something that the kids
sometimes
say.
The other one too.
Yeah, exactly. It happens. I get, maybe this is a year where Kelce downshifts a little bit and saves it for the playoffs. Yeah. I just wonder if that isn't, something that's in play. They have a lot of mouths to feed. I fade him.
I'd go higher in Pacheco, though.
And on my the guys that I'm bullish on for this particular game, I have Pacheco circled. I just think he's the best of the backs, and I think he's sort of more and more, I feel like he establishes himself as such, and so if he's the guy getting the most touches for Kansas City, I bet he can reach what's a relatively low threshold in terms of projection right now at 10.6 in our league. And I put Goff on the guy that I'm bullish on in this game simply because there is no Chris Jones, and they're going to need to score. So, I think that they throw the ball and they score some, and because Kansas City scores so much, it's not, it's not a game where Kansas City's going to be too worried about giving up 27 points. Like, they'll cover that. It'll be fine. I think Detroit ends up moving the ball and scoring some simply because they really, really need to.
So we're picking all these, we're talking about all these different point projections. So I wanted to introduce this segment, this Primetime Forecast, to kind of close us out here. Yeah. Where we are going to pick some locks, pick your guys who you think are going to go over or under their projections. I only have one bit of music that I know by heart, so this is the music that we're going to play while we do it. So, Cayden, were you picking Gibbs or?
Gibbs is the guy fade.
Okay. So
Gibbs is Gibbs and Kelce.
Yep. I'm gonna have you got to pick one from each game.
All right. Kelce.
Okay.
Should have gone Gibbs.
I'm going Amon-Ra for my fade.
Okay. Amon-Ra.
Now we're doing who should
well, Ryan's got it.
It's over or under. So but we're only picking one guy, so it's whether I'm going to pick Goff because I think he's going to score more than 15 points.
Okay.
There you go. And so you're going to pick Kelce to score less than his 18.9. You're going to pick Amon-Ra to score less than his 6.7. Okay.
I might be done in the first quarter, but I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the other game that is going to be on NBC later this week, Sunday Night Football, we're going to have Giants and Cowboys. Who are your picks? Who are you going over under?
Jalen Hyatt over.
Ooh, I like that pick. I like
you don't even
that
have
pick.
it on the list.
I know. I just kind of threw some names on there.
Yeah, I'm putting Hyatt for the over.
I think both Pollard and Lamb are both going under the 17.5 projected, but I'll go with Pollard. Surely you're going to ease him in.
Okay. Oh, no, my music stopped. All right. I am going to go with, I'm going to say Barkley under. I'm going to put Barkley under 16.9 points.
How do you feel about that Saquon Barkley owner.
I think that Cowboys defense, that front line is really good, and that secondary is good, and they're going to let them be able to load the box against Barkley.
And I don't disagree with you. I don't. Why did I get Barkley? Was it?
I have no idea.
I know what happened. This is the honest God truth. My phone went into auto draft.
That's how you got Barkley?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope he has a great year for you, because that'd be a fun story.
Yeah, because it happened on other players, and so I got fed up with it. So I actually had to pause the draft and reverse it as we move forward, because I'm sitting there, and next thing is bidding for me. I'm like, what is going on? And I get a player I didn't want. I'm like, I'm not. No. So I undid that selection.
I'm using phrases in ways that the kids don't. Maybe should, and Mike can't work his phone. This is just
all right,
a couple of cranky old guys giving you fantasy advice.
So that's your primetime forecast.
All right,
for
Week
Mike
1.
Collier,
Cayden
McFarland. I'm Ryan Love.
That was fun.
Good luck, everyone.
Yeah.